Today's project is going to be the Huntvision Xpoe NVR with 8 cameras. Now, the reason I'm talking about this NVR with Xpoe cameras is because I was kind of interested to see if they were using regular 48 volt PoE and just moving the pins around, or I was very curious to see what they were trying to do. So Foscam is actually the manufacturer of Huntvision. It's the same manufacturer. Also with a local electronics store called Micro Center has their own brand, which is called Winbook. Now Winbook is just Micro Center rebadging the cameras or any other equipment that they sell and just labeling it as their own. Now these cameras are pretty much exactly the same as the regular Foscams. The only difference is a firmware difference, and with these cameras you can't do the peer-to-peer connections, so for whatever reason you can't use these with the regular Foscam app. Although some of the other Winbook stuff you can use the Foscam app. It's the exact same app. The only thing is that they've again rebadged it as Winbook. Now taking apart this PoE, this regular PoE camera, you can see that there's actually a circuit board right here that is for converting the standard PoE into from the 48 volts into what the camera can accept. That's probably 5 volts or something thereabout. And the reason I took this apart is to compare the differences between the Huntvision and the Winbook, aka Foscam. So we're gonna bring into the shot here so you can see that this is a 3-board design. We're going to put this over to the side here and bring in this guy right here, which is the Huntvision. Now you can see that there is a board missing here, and they're actually using a few less wires. What I've actually done with the Winbook is I was actually taking the wires here, the twisted pairs, to see if I could just put this directly in to just a regular RJ45 connector. The reason being is you get these pigtails here, and these are just really horrible because when you put them into an outdoor environment, you have to do one of two things. You either have to drill a hole in the side of the building that can actually stuff all this wiring into so that it doesn't get exposed to the elements, which is kind of frustrating because they've gone to the effort of putting on this twist lock connector, and you would almost wonder, why is it that they don't just supply the other half of this? Because there is the facility here to actually have a potential semi-waterproof connector that would go on here, and that would be fairly handy. I don't know, I'm assuming that this reset button is not that waterproof either. So in that being said, I'm not too happy with these pigtails because you can't really do much with them. You can't put them in a waterproof gland, tighten it down, and keep the water out of it. You pretty much have to cut a notch in a waterproof enclosure and then silicone it all around it, or drill a hole in the building that's, you know, this big or whatever, to actually put the whole pigtail in. It just kind of annoyed me, so I was kind of experimenting with this. These two wires are for, you have the PoE, which goes through the regular RJ45, and then these two wires, one is for power if you don't use PoE, and then this other one here is for the reset, like you see here. So getting into the meat of it, I've done a little bit of experimenting here to take a look and see what it is exactly that this NVR is doing, because this NVR is providing power and network connectivity to the camera to communicate with it and get the video off of it and power it. So what I've done here is I've actually made a little bit of a mess of a wiring job here, just trying to figure out exactly what it is they were doing. And what they were doing is they're not using on a regular Ethernet cable with the four twisted pair. They're not using brown and white brown. They're actually using the same first four wires here, which are the white, orange, orange, white, green, and green. They're using those for the data communication as normal, as you would any other RJ45 Ethernet cable, whatever you want to call it. But what they're doing is they're using the white, orange, and orange, and the white, blue, and blue as the positive and negative. So the white, blue, and blue are the negative side, and the white, orange, orange are being used as the positive side. Now you got to watch out for this, because I almost released the magic smoke on this gigabit switch here, and I hooked it up because I was trying to see what pins they were using for networking, and I was just using the first four, which was white, orange, orange, white, green, green, and I had it looped out to this connector here. So what I did was I had this camera was going into the Ethernet over here, and then on the other side it was going to the NVR, and then in the middle I was using this basically as a T connector, and plugged it in here and was looking at the indicator lights. And after about, I'd say about 2 minutes, I could smell the smell, and this switch was almost cooked, and that's why I took it apart, because I was trying to see if it was actually frying the isolation chips here, or if it was actually cooking the actual processor here. So what is this powering? How many volts is this system powering? Well, it's actually 20 volts DC. So it's using the white, orange, orange, and white, blue, blue. It's passing 20 volts DC across that. So it is not the regular 48 volts that we are accustomed to with standard PoE. Now, the reason I was going to all the trouble to figure this out is I was wondering if they were using standard PoE, but they changed up the pins so that, they'd say, oh, well, it's our proprietary, whatever, but it was actually still, technically PoE, but it's not. They're just doing regular DC across four of the pins. They're ignoring white, brown, brown altogether. Now, this is kind of scary, because if you actually tried to connect this camera from the NVR into a switch to try and do this, you may damage your networking equipment, like I almost did here with this board. So I would strongly advise to avoid trying to do any of this experimenting unless you want to lose some of your valuable equipment. It's not going to damage the camera. If you plug this into PoE, it just won't turn on. Regular PoE does current limit to an extent. I believe the reason that it almost cooked this was because it's taking the direct power pack here, and I can actually pull this over here for a second. So this power pack is putting out, let's see here, are you going to focus? Focus. There we go. Okay, so it's putting out 19 volts. So roughly 19-20 volts is what this power pack is putting out. And it did not current limit to this this networking switch here. That's why it almost fried it. I believe with PoE, I think it's about a half an amp. Something about there, 48 volts at a half an amp. And then if you go from a injector like this, So this will, well, let's double check. Let's see. What is the power? Yeah, so 48 volts. Hold on. Focus. Come on. There we go. Okay, so if you look right there, 48 volts at half an amp. That is normal PoE injection voltage and current. And then this is just one of the little TP-Link standalone injectors. Now, what this was doing was this was putting the full voltage of 19, 20 some odd volts, and this is putting almost, this is at 4,750 milliwatt, or let's just round it up and let's say 5 amps essentially. So this is a 5 amp power supply at 19 volts, and that was putting pretty much all that amperage across this networking switch, and that's why it almost cooked it. Now, the other problem that I have with this camera system is when I was probing around here, I was probing around these pins here with my multimeter, and the interesting thing is if you actually bridge out the power connector, so if you do orange or white orange and bridge that across white blue and blue, it will actually short out the whole NVR. The NVR will turn off, will reboot, or if you keep it in a bridge state, I would assume that it could potentially cause some damage to the unit itself. So something to look out for installations if you're using this in a professional industrial setting is that you could potentially damage this system if you were to short out the wires onto this. You could actually damage the NVR. So I'm kind of disappointed on Huntvision, aka Foscam, for doing that. That they didn't have a current limiting system for each individual port. I know that some networking switches that are PoE have it set up so that if one port were to short out, you would just disconnect that port after a certain current limit, and it would not affect the rest of the chain. Same thing if you were to use a whole bunch of these little guys with the little power pack here. You know, if this guy shorts out, it's not going to take the whole chain out. With this, if you have one of your cameras, one of your 8 cameras, short out for whatever reason, it could potentially take down your whole camera system, and that's not good from a security standpoint. So something to be aware of. Now, the nice thing is if all these cameras enclosures are exactly the same. So say for example you get a camera that gets damaged by vandals or something like that. These cameras, say that you had one that had damages for whatever reason, say that the front plate here was damaged or whatever, they're all the same. The only difference is that the little plastic band here on the back is just a different color. Everything else is exactly the same. So the parts are interchangeable, which is kind of nice. The only downside is that the PoE is not interchangeable. Other things to mention, I have not tested to see what the line drop distance would be for these cameras. So can these cameras go, the full 300 feet that a normal PoE injection style PoE camera can do? I have not tested that. That's going to be something that I might test in a later video. But yeah, definitely a little insight on this camera system and something to be aware of. I would almost recommend the WinBook. The only downside is if you have a customer that wants to be able to watch this on their phone, you would have to do port forwarding and all that fun old school stuff. You can't do the regular peer-to-peer, which is kind of fairly common now. You would have to go through either a software running on a server, or you would have to run through the NVR, which then would handle the peer-to-peer connection, so you don't have to do any port forwarding. That's the downside to the rebadged Winbook and the firmware that comes with it. I do know that the same exact model of this in the FOSCam does have the peer-to-peer, so you don't need to have that in-between NVR or software to connect it to any type of app for your phone operating system. So you are saving some money on this. However, you are only getting IP regular. You're just getting an IP address. You don't get the peer-to-peer connection. And I have not gone into this Huntvision yet to see if it has the peer-to-peer connection. You're really not going to power this in an easy manner anyway without the NVR. You could go in here and give it 20 volts across pins 1 and 2, and what is that? That's 5 and 6, I believe. Yeah, you're just not going to do that. Otherwise, it's just going to be a hack job, and you're going to have to splice in like what I was doing here, and it's kind of pointless. So I have no intentions of looking to see what the firmware does in this as far as peer-to-peer, to have this as a standalone system without the NVR. So yeah, let me know if you guys found this video at all helpful. I'm going to try and start making some more videos like this of doing teardowns and explanations of what the wiring systems are of different devices. This is mainly just for people like me that do installations at businesses and things like that. I really like the build quality of this. You know, it's metal, it's rugged. I like it. I like some of FOSCam's other products. I think that they're built fairly sturdy. I do like the fact that they work with a lot of open source software like iSpy. I kind of like that as a video server system. Works fairly well, and FOSCam's software works, or their protocols work with a lot of different projects, which is awesome. So anyway, give me a thumbs up, give me some comments, give me some input, tell me what you think of the video, and I'll see you guys on the next one.